traditional contracts, marriage contracts, historical contracts, French contracts, African tribal contracts, religious contracts. Now, Mr. Hart, can you relate our next case to the summary we've been building?
Thank you. I prefer to pass.
What did you say?
Well, I have nothing relevant to say concerning the case. However, when I have something relevant to say, I shall raise my hand.
Mr. Hart, would you step down here?
Excuse me.
Mr. Hart, here is a dime. Call your mother. Tell her there's serious doubt about your becoming a lawyer.
You are a son of a bitch, Kingsfield.
Mr. Hart, that is the most intelligent thing you've said today. Let me take your seat.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of colonialbook.com and this is my good friend and co-host Margot D. of Book and Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
You were just talking about like the TikTok response.
Yes.
To today's episode. We'll get into that in a minute. I'm kind of surprised and I want to know more. But if you are just joining us, maybe you found out about this episode on TikTok and here you are. Well, welcome. Welcome. This is a podcast where we talk about films that have been adapted from books, but also really from any literary source. We've been at this for 10 years, y'all. 10 years. Wow. And several presidents. It's amazing. So we try to crank out a brand new episode for you every single week. And so some weeks, we have to choose a shorter literary source. Sometimes it's a magazine article or a short story or a novella or a play or a song or a poem. As long as somebody's decided to adapt a movie from it, we will consider it. And that also means that we're constantly looking for suggestions. So I'll bet you have some. We would like to hear them or see them, rather. There's several places where you can make those suggestions. You can meet other listeners of this podcast and interact with us on the internet.
We do have a basic face page. Type in Book vs. Movie Podcast. Be sure to like it. We post episodes there, but we're interactive in our Facebook group. If you type in Book vs. Movie Podcast group and ask to join, people leave their suggestions there. We just ask once again that the material is something that we can get our hands on or eyes on quickly, and the movie needs to be streaming on a major app. That's all we ask for. On Twitter and Instagram and Threads, you type out Book versus a Movie, and we have an old-timey email, Book versus Movie Podcast. Spell all those words out at gmail.com. You can send all your suggestions there. And if you would like some stickers, Book versus Movie stickers, just send along your address via the email and we'll drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Patreon. Once again, Book vs. Movie Podcast. This is a place you can support us. We have about 8 years worth of shows, a little over 150 episodes there. Recently, I put up there Streetcar Named Desire, Whip It, To Sir with Love, The Little Prince, and Argo. They all went up there recently, and it helps us with books and movies and just the cost of keeping the show together. So we're very grateful for all of you that support us there. But if you're looking for another way to do it, if you can leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts, that would be amazing, or leave some stars. It really helps us find our people, or just, tell a friend about the show.
It's amazing, even after 10 years and so many, many, many books and movies, so many, as I've said before, that I forget how many. I just have to now assume that if I've ever seen a movie, it's because of this podcast. But we still get listener suggestions all the time that we never considered, never thought about, didn't even cross our minds. And this week's is one of those films. Somebody
Right.
recently in the Facebook group said, "Hey, have you ever done?" Oh my gosh, I suddenly forgot.
The Paper Chase.
I wanted to say The Paper Chase, but all I could see was John Houseman saying, "We make our money the old-fashioned way.
We
earn it."
I think about him in Scrooged. When
Well, we'll get to him.
Yes.
He's amazing. So underrated, so undervalued. I'm going to say it. He's the reason that this movie was such a hit and that became a television show and everything. We're talking about The Paper Chase. Is the name of the film and the book. They're both called Paper Chase. I have thoughts, but let's talk about our author, because as we were just kind of chatting between us that he seems to be a pretty good guy.
Yeah, I was saying,
right?
Yes, he did graduate from Harvard Law School. So his name was John J. Osborn Jr. And if you're a New Yorker, especially, the word John J. comes up a lot. He's the first Chief Justice of the United States. On his mother's side, he's related to him, and also Cornelius Vanderbilt. He went to Harvard University and Yale University. He had his law degree, and then he also had graduate work. He wrote this as a third-year writing project at Harvard Law. He went in the 60s when it was during the Vietnam War, so there's some of that interspersed here. By the way, he was born in 1945 in Boston. He was mainly raised in the Bay Area. He died in San Francisco, where he was also a professor. He was married, had kids, and this is in 2022. I was saying to Margot before we got on the show, yes, we're both named Margot if this is your first time, that I saw a YouTube clip, and he was interviewed at Harvard Law School about this book. And he's very proud of this book and the work that went into the movie that we're talking about today. He had a writing professor that helped him, polish the script. And very lucky guy, I'm telling you, your senior year in law school, and somebody helps you get a publisher and you write a book and it becomes a movie. But he also worked very hard. He taught law at several places throughout his long career. And this is his first one that became was adapted, but there's also been the TV series for here, and then he also had one, The Associates.
Yeah, and then there was one called Listen to the Marriage. He had a book.
Right.
I remember. He was married for a long, long time to his only wife. And yeah, isn't there a John Jay College of Criminal Justice or something like that?
Yes, there is.
Right in New York. So
there's J Street, and there's
there's J Street. Extremely privileged background.
Yes.
But as far as we can tell, a very hardworking, decent fellow.
Yes.
So having said all that, here's the thing. And it's not that, okay, what I was reminded of over and over again in my experience of reading this book and then watching this film was our experience when we covered The Graduate.
Yeah, similar.
Where you have, first of all, it's a character in a similar point in his life, similar circumstances, socioeconomic, similar time in American history, but you have an adaptation which is wonderful, and it's a faithful adaptation of the source material. But the book is not great. is not at the level that the adaptation is. I'm not going to say it's not great. It's a better book than The Graduate, for sure.
Yeah, oh yeah.
But I think if this were a book that, as Margot said earlier, this was he wrote this as an assignment, or he wrote the seeds of it as an assignment for a class. And basically, the people, his friends, were like, "This is great. You should get this published." And they got it published. Now he had connections to get it published. This is a book that today would have been a blog, is what I'm saying. This is a blog. I feel like I'm reading a blog. We have, if you're familiar with the film, we have, the story is exactly as it is in the book, except the book has, for some reason that we're never really clear about, it has these interstitial kind of asides, not quite a chapter, but a really brief little where he kind of pops in, and it's all in italics. He shares a real life story from his own personal experience in law school, whether that's, and they're different. Like it might be a story somebody told him, or it might be a thing that he observed in Harvard Square, or it might be any number of things. But for some reason, he like steps out of this. Why he doesn't have that happen to the characters in the story, I am completely baffled.
Yeah.
He steps out. Because in the movie, what they do is they weave that into the character's experience, and it's so much better. But in the book, he like steps out of it to give us these asides. And it's not that it's not poorly written, and it's not a bad story, but I don't care because I don't go to Harvard Law. Like it's so much like the stakes are so high in a way that is completely incomprehensible to me because I'm not a privileged person in Harvard Law.
Right.
You know, and I'm not competing against other privileged people at the very cutthroat, I guess, environment of Harvard.
I wonder if it's also like graduate school. I never went to graduate school, but all my friends that have, they always say the first
I went to graduate school.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, it's like that. And my husband went to graduate school at Harvard. And so there was a lot there, and we were there at the same time. And so there was a lot of there that I loved and I enjoyed because it reminds me of that time, and which was a very nice time in our lives. I don't understand like the way he gets so obsessed about this professor. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, should we say the story just to, we'll just give a brief outline. So we have it's a young law student. He's from the Midwest. I believe Minnesota. Anyway.
Minnesota?
Yeah. And his name is Hart. That's his last name. And that's my friend's son's name, by the way. But he's going to law school, and he is obsessed with a certain professor named Kingsfield who teaches in the Socratic method, which is questioning, question. Once you answer a question, ask another question.
He's not lecturing.
Right.
Instead of lecturing, he just walks in and he's like, hey, Mr. Hart, tell me about such and such.
Right.
And Hart's got to be like, buh, buh, and he scrambles. And then like, okay, Mr. Brooks, tell me why that's important. And that's the way he runs the class, which is different than everybody else in the school, apparently.
Right. And it's contract law, I believe, which is one of the toughest ones to get through. He joins a study group. He has a relationship with the professor's daughter, which for me is like an eye roll. It's like, it's so,
oh my gosh,
of course,
okay.
It's the professor's daughter.
Also in the book, he's interacting a little bit. He calls his parents back home. He has a girlfriend back home in the book.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever learn her name. And then, yes, he develops a relationship with this girl whose name is Susan Field. The professor's name is Fieldstone.
Kingsfield.
Kingsfield, yes. Anyway, we all see it from a mile away that she's the professor's daughter. In the book and in the movie, we'll get into it when we talk about the movie, but in the movie, they handle this a little bit differently and better, in my opinion. But in the book, I'm saying relationship, and I'm putting big old quotes on this because I don't think there's any point in the book where he ever asks her anything about herself.
I noticed the same thing.
Day? Not how
what are your
doing?
dreams?
What do you want to do? What are you studying? Where did you come from?
What's it like to be that professor's daughter?
Oh, it's you. You're pretty. Let me tell you how hard law school is. I've got this one professor. Let me tell you. And every time he encounters this poor woman, he goes on and on and on about himself.
And then they hit each other. There's a whole thing where they're striking one another, and they're very toxic. It's a very toxic relationship.
It's not a good relationship.
No.
You're not rooting for them.
No, it's something. It's a dumb relationship you would have in your 20s. Like it's for sure that rings true to me.
It is that.
It is, and I've met a lot of guys like Hart, in college that talk down to you. They're condescending, but they're also scared. They have these expectations of what school is going to be like and what life is going to be like, what they want for themselves. They ask a lot of themselves. I get all of that. I just found, like you said, like the sidebars in the italics. I was like, why are we? And if one of them had McNamara, like that McNamara visited the campus during the Vietnam War, right? I'm like, where's that chapter? That's like 2 paragraphs.
You could have had any one of these characters have this experience happen to them. But it's so important that we know that it happened to you.
Right. I think, don't they switch perspectives?
Yes,
but they're
yes.
very similar. I mean, there's like the nerdy one, and then
Exactly.
there's the
I
mean
start losing
one.
track. They're very much alike. They have very similar backgrounds. The biggest difference is that one of them is married. Oh my gosh, talk about talking down to a woman. There's two women in the whole thing. There's Susan, who's played by the Bionic Woman in the movie, and there's who, like I
Ashley.
said, he never asks her about herself. And then there's Ashley, who's married to this character named Brooks, and everybody treats her like she's
It's a
I don't know, like
child.
she's there to what? She's a child who's there to cook and pick up after you, I guess. And Brooks is not doing so great. He's failing. He seems to have some kind of like social anxiety going on, that it's really difficult for him to participate in class. I mean, he seriously has some problems. He's obviously very bright, but yeah, the whole thing about his attempted suicide is handled a little bit differently than in the film. Anyway, what I'm saying is this book is a stone bummer, man.
Yeah.
There's no light moments. And this is the same thing about The Graduate. If you've ever read The Graduate, and I'm going to bet you haven't, good luck getting your hands on it, first of all, because it was, as I recall, it was not
tough.
easy. And when I did get it, it was a first edition, which tells me like there's not a lot of them around. And The Graduate, the movie, which is great, is an almost word for word adaptation of the book. But the big difference is the book is absolutely devoid of any humor, any levity, any self-introspection of any kind. So it takes itself completely 100%, never lets up seriously. Which means if you know that story of The Graduate, what it means is Mrs. Robinson is a rapist. Basically, she has raped him, and it's like literally that dark. Same thing with if you love The Paper Chase, the movie, the dialogue is word for word in many many places, but the book just does not have heart. In the book is not Timothy Bottoms. Timothy Bottoms is giving us like amusement and confusion, and he's doing a lot without saying anything because if you're just going by the text, this guy has zero chill. It's just really a bummer.
Yes.
I found it to be just really, really a bummer. I don't like his relationship with Susan in the book. I mean, I don't like the marriage of Brooks and so. I don't like the guys in there. I hate those guys in the study group. Who wants to sit around with these guys and talk about law? And then he's obsessed with the professor, again, with zero irony or bemusement or anything. So it just seems really strange to me.
Yeah.
I just found it really weird.
It is a weird movie. I mean, book, excuse me. And yeah, the whole thing is that law school is all about grades, and it's very hard. And a lot of people drop out because they say the first year they try to kill you, the second year they do something, and your third year you're bored. Like there's something like that first year is especially hard. That people,
it's just to break them.
It's just to break you. And especially at Harvard, I'm sure you're surrounded by people who were brainiacs at all their schools. And so everyone is like struggling to stand out and be seen. And this is before, by the way, neurodiversion or any sort of like,
before anything remotely
special education or anything, like people are dyslexic or whatever. There's like none of that.
It's before any kind of affirmative action.
Yes.
It's before a lot of things.
It's before, right. And he was saying, the author was saying that part of the thing that attracted him is that he was in school during the 60s. And much like now with campuses where there's a lot of protests going on, this is, when he was there, it was like 67, 68. There were a lot of protests.
Very contentious time.
And he said that the thing about Harvard is like it was always just a little separate from the rest of the world. And then Harvard Law is its own little universe. And you could manage
like that. It is it does have that feel, or at least it did when we were there.
Which I wonder if that's not in the book. But then he's writing it while he's going through it. It would have probably been better to go back and look at it. And then
I feel like, and I don't like, who was your editor is what I was wondering the whole time I'm reading it. Like a good editor would have told you just some minor adjustments. Now listen, I'm not a law student. I never was a law student. Maybe if I was, I would feel like, oh, this is my life. I would have, if I could relate to it on that level, maybe I would enjoy it a lot more. But I did go to grad school, and grad school is that kind of an experience. But you do have fun. Like you're studying what you want to study. Like you choose to go to grad school.
I read somewhere, it was like, I think it was Esquire or GQ. It was a dude who graduated from Harvard Law School, and he wrote about how it was 10 years out of law school and that he was miserable. Like the best time of his life was at Harvard Law School. It was his own thing. And then 10 years later, being a lawyer is like the worst thing. And
yeah,
I would have...
I can see.
That I absolutely can understand. I think like maybe I'm wondering like what's so great about Harvard Law School? It sounds really miserable to me if I'm reading this.
It doesn't sound great.
Yeah.
And as you say, like you don't get... The book is assuming a lot. The book is assuming that I know what it's like to go to Harvard. Now, I only know that by marriage. My husband went there. There's some of that, but I don't know what it's like to go. Do I even know an attorney in my personal life? I don't think I do.
Oh my God. Difference between New York and San Diego.
Yeah. That's true.
Friends
just lawyers. In the kind of circles I run in, I guess. I'm sure. I know I have neighbors who are attorneys, but I feel like the book is assuming a lot. The book is assuming that I know what Harvard is like. The book is assuming I know what it's like to be a law student, and I know what and I don't. It's making a lot of assumptions that I feel leave a reader out, wondering, just like head scratching, like what is this? It's not poorly written.
No, it's not. And in the end, I mean, they're all about they're there in August until April, and then they take like one big exam, and it's like you pass this or you're a loser, whatever. And he talks to his professor to say, "Oh my God, I really loved your class. It was so good." And the man, it's a very big thing in the story, is that he says, "What's your name again?" His professor, who's been teaching him for 8 months.
They've had all kinds of interactions. Right. He's dating the guy's daughter, and he just is not even. He's not even on his radar. Not even a little bit.
Not even like a speck. So that's kind of funny. And then I guess we do spoil all the details. At the end, he's hanging out with Susan at the Cape, I guess, or by the water. Mm-hmm. He gets his grades in the mail, and he makes a paper airplane with them and tosses it into the ocean. So he has no idea how he did.
Well, he does and he doesn't. But because, look, if you go to Harvard, again, I know this by marriage. If my husband had gotten his first year grades in grad school and tossed them into the Charles River as an airplane, he still would have figured out what his grades were. And also, he kind of knew already, right? You kind of know. When you show up to go back to class the next semester and they don't let you in, then maybe you failed. So it's kind of like that's cute, but like you kind of know how you did, don't you? I think you do.
I think we're supposed to think like he's trying to have more balance, we would say now, in his life. But I don't think... sometimes in your life...
I'm confused.
Also, sometimes in your life you don't have balance. Like sometimes you have to focus.
You have times in your life where you don't.
Well, you just don't, and that's okay. It's just understand that. But it's that typical, also that thing of like, you're in a relationship with somebody and they're like, you're obsessed with this thing, you need to let go. And the person either can let it go or they can't. But it's, I just, like, you're yelling at a stone, basically. Like, we've heard it before. This is something we've encountered before. So it's a very toxic couple. You would meet them at a party and they'd be sniping at each other, and you like uncomfortably grab your drink and walk away.
Why are they together?
Why are these people together? I got to get out of here. It's fine. I mean, and it did fine. So what do I know? It came out in 1971 and it became, I guess it was a hit because it was sold and turned into a movie. We have a trailer. It's a longer trailer, but we'll take a quick break. We'll play the trailer and then we'll get into this very interesting movie.
Harvard Law School, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Since its founding in 1817, it has produced 75 United States senators, 200 congressmen, 11 Supreme Court justices, and an undetermined number of dropouts and breakdowns.
That's just a screamer, man. Screams every Friday and Sunday night at exactly 12.
This is James T. Hart, class of 76. He has a birth certificate, a driver's license, a high school diploma, a draft card, a college degree, and he's about to spend 3 more years of his life chasing another piece of paper.
Loudly, Mr. Hart. Fill this room with your intelligence.
I haven't read the case.
20th Century Fox presents The Paper Chase.
All that stuff about grades is true. You gotta work like hell.
We use the Socratic method here.
They're just grades, Kevin.
You come in here with a skull full of mush.
It's a number, it's a letter, but it determines salaries and futures.
Professor Kingsfield?
Yes?
You wanna get drunk?
That is the most intelligent thing you've said today.
There's no guarantee that we're all gonna be here in the spring. Some of us might have nervous breakdowns.
One more word out of you, Anderson, and I'll lock your head in your attaché case.
What did you say?
The Paper Chase.
Every guy in this house almost flunked out the first year. It's not too hard to see why. They had broads on the brain.
Oh, do you mind? There's someone following me. Just to the corner's all right.
I'll walk you home.
I'm telling you, Hart, the worst thing a law student can do is get involved with a girl.
I haven't been working hard enough since I've been seeing so much of you.
And it's all my fault, is that what you're saying?
Why didn't you tell me you were Kingsfield's daughter?
Our relationship has changed.
It certainly has. I feel like an intruder.
Not in his bed, but in his study. Oh my God, he's back. Listen, get the kitchen.
So what do you say?
Well, he just said he hoped it wasn't a law student.
The Paper Chase.
I found something. There's a room above the stacks where they keep all of the actual notes the professors took when they were law students here. I want to see the notes. I want to see Kingsfield's notes on contracts. I shall be irrational. Panic has descended.
Oh my God, oh my God!
Oh my God. What have you been doing in this room?
What do you mean, flunk me?
Mr. Hart, here's a dime. Call your mother. Tell her there's serious doubt about your becoming a lawyer.
Look, he's got you scared to death. Oh, you're gonna pass because you're the kind the law school wants. You'll get your little diploma, your piece of paper that's no different than this, and you can stick it in your silver box with all the other paper in your life.
You are a son of a...
This is a really good adaptation, I have to say. I mean,
Agree.
the director's James Bridges. He also contributed to the screenplay. John J. Osborn he basically wrote all of John Houseman's lines, so that rings true.
Which are great.
John
They're
Houseman
super good.
was an actor who was also who was mainly an acting teacher for decades.
Yes.
He was
Yes.
frenemies with Orson Welles. I mean, he goes back that long.
They worked together, and then they had a falling
They hated
out.
each other. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they each called the other one pompous, which should let you know how pompous they were. Yes. But he's 70 years old, and they bring him in to do this, and he rules. Like the second he's on screen, you're not.
Oh, he's riveting.
He's
so good.
So good.
The study of law is something new and unfamiliar to most of you, unlike any schooling you've ever been through before. We use the Socratic method here. I call on you, ask you a question, and you answer it. Why don't I just give you a lecture? Because through my questions, you learn to teach yourselves. Through this method of questioning, answering, we seek to develop in you the ability to analyze that vast complex of facts that constitute the relationships of members within a given society. Questioning and answering. At times, you may feel that you have found the correct answer. I assure you that this is a total delusion on your part. You will never find the correct, absolute, and final answer. In my classroom, there is always another question to follow your answer. Yes, you're on a treadmill. My little questions spin the tumblers of your mind. You're on an operating table. My little questions are the fingers probing your brain. We do brain surgery here. You teach yourselves the law, but I train your mind. You come in here with a skull full of mush, and you leave thinking like a lawyer.
Lindsay Wagner plays the daughter, Susan. And
she's wonderful. This is like her first big film, right?
She's like 21.
She's terrific in this.
Yeah.
I think the cast on the whole is just... We have Blair Brown is in this.
Yes. Edward Herman.
So good.
And I should say this, they mentioned this in the talk that maybe I'll post on the Facebook group. The music's by John Williams, which you'll hear when you're listening to it. And also
it's excellent.
The cinematography, Gordon Willis.
Beautiful.
The way they film, it's so amazing that
you get Minnesota boy goes to Harvard Law. Mm-hmm. Harvard Law that's been there. It's one of the oldest, the United States compared to other countries, not that old, So we have very few institutions that predate the founding of the country, and Harvard is one of them. You go there and you really get, it is just, as they say, steeped in history. And we're not getting any of this kind of stuff in the book. But when you go there, it is like that. You look around at these old buildings with big names on them and statues. Like, I love the scene. And he's like in awe of it, Hart is, mm-hmm. He doesn't even know what to make of it. I love the scene where they're in the swimming pool. They go swimming at one of the swimming pools at Harvard to just kind of, decompress is a thing that they do. And it is also, we also get in the book in a way that in the movie that we just don't get in the book, of how much, it's an old institution. It is an old institution of privileged white young men. And but I feel like the movie is giving us, it is in some ways about that, and not just like, not even mentioning it or assuming that that's just how things should be. It has a little bit of a cockeyed look at that, because we do have a couple of women in that classroom. We do have a couple of people of color mm-hmm. in that classroom. That's not in the book at all. So I really love the way that the movie gives us this venerable institution, and then John Houseman opens his mouth and, I want a television show, I want commercials, I want everything.
And
I want
you
him
get
to be my ringtone.
It's interesting. Gordon Willis, who's the cinematographer, also just did Godfather before he did this movie. So if you're wondering why it's so well filmed, this man is working on it. But when you're watching it at first, John Houseman appears to be so much taller and bigger than everybody else. And then throughout the movie, they get a little closer and closer. He and Timothy Bottoms, and you realize they're the same size, basically.
Yeah. Then they're in the elevator together,
right? But
it's this whole journey through the film. There's so many scenes that I just love, and it is just that. It's just the cinematography and the way that the shot's been set up. And this is in the book. Again, it's a very faithful adaptation, but it's just so much better than the source material. He's in the library, and it's an old library, so it has those glass floors. And my grad school library at Pratt Institute had glass floors like that. And I remember that you'd be on one floor and you could look up and you could see that somebody was walking back and forth.
Oh, wow.
And and he looks up and he's like, something about the way that shadow is walking. And sure enough, it's John Houseman. I just love that scene of John Houseman doesn't say anything. We just see like a shadow of some very nice loafers, some very nice men's dress shoes up above, and there's just something about the way that he just, it's so great. That character is so wonderful. He just brings so much. He could, in somebody else's hands, it could have been
hammy,
too villainous, too hammy,
mm-hmm.
Too overbearing, not believable. But it's perfection. And I believe him, even to this point, I believe him as the Bionic Woman's dad.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love the scene where poor Brooks, James Naughton, he's married and he has stress all over his poor face. Like,
now, suppose I write you a contract. It says, I agree for $100 to paint your apartment with white paint. Is there any difference between this and a contract which says, you agree to paint my apartment with white paint, provided I pay you $100? Mr. Brooks. You won't find it in the casebook, Mr. Brooks. This is just a hypothetical. I am waiting, Mr. Brooks.
I'm not sure that I understood it all. Could you tell me it again?
In one case, there are two mutual promises. In the other, there is a condition on a promise. Mr. Brooks, do you know the difference between a condition on a promise and a promise? Mr. Brooks, did you read this material?
Yes, I did read the material. I memorized the facts. I have a photographic memory.
A what?
A photographic memory.
Do you repeat that?
A photographic memory.
A photographic memory is of absolutely no use to you, Mr. Brooks, without the ability to analyze that vast mass of facts between your ears. Did you hear me, Brooks?
Yes, sir.
He's great in this.
Oh my God, what he calls on him.
Both him and his wife. I think they are wonderful. I remember those married people dorms.
I was going to say, did you go, were you married in college and grad school?
No, I wasn't. We weren't married yet, but we had friends who were married and we knew a couple people who lived in those married people dorms. And they looked very much like that. That was really something like, oh, wow, it looks just like I remember. But those two in particular, the whole cast is great. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that relationship, and he's just, I mean, it's heartbreaking. I just so feel for this guy because it could be anybody, anybody. It's in this very weird situation. He's having a very natural response to a very intimidating situation. And Hart, the other guys are so like blasé and insensitive about it, but Hart really feels for the guy and is trying to do what he can to help him. And that's all in the book, but I think these performances really
bring it to life.
Really bring it. You really connect with them. You really feel for them in a way that you don't quite in the book.
Yeah, when he says he has a photographic memory, like he's really trying to build himself up, and it's.
I know.
And you're like, dude, you're going to be teased so bad for that. Like, just.
I know. It's like one of those things.
It's like, please respect me.
Have you ever had where you're trying to do something that you've never done before? Like you're putting together a piece of furniture from IKEA, and you've got this stupid diagram and an Allen wrench and a pile of crap, and you're like, I'm a smart person. I've done a lot of smart things. I know. You have to like psych yourself up.
Right.
And he's doing it, but he's doing it in front of the professor and everybody else. And you're like, oh, Brooks.
It's Edward Herman is one of his roommates. It's like, is anybody more perfect? Like a Harvard Law School.
He's so that guy.
Oh my God. That's just the voice. And
love it.
And love it. So
Liberty Bell.
Liberty Bell. Like the Liberty Bell.
Fortune to Xerox that, Bell.
Maybe I'm not going to Xerox it.
But what does that mean? Maybe you're not going to Xerox it.
This is a great outline. Fantastic. If yours doesn't stack up, you won't get a chance to look at it.
Bell's going to have his outline Xerox just like Bruce.
Maybe Bell is, and maybe Bell isn't.
The outline is a tool, Bell. A tool, not an end in itself.
I'm going to publish that outline.
The casebook's already been published, Bell.
My outline is better than the casebook. Anyway, it's going to be longer. I think you're all a bunch of pimps.
You're on a suicide course, Bell.
I don't have to sit here and be insulted. One more word out of you, Anderson, and I'll lock your head in your attaché case. How's your outline coming?
Well, I have not yet reached the stage where my outline is reducible to a single word. Yet at 50 pages, if I may pat myself on the back, it's clean and concise.
How about you, Kevin?
It's coming.
Can you tell us how far?
It'll be ready in 4 weeks.
4 exams. I don't think Kevin has an outline. I think the pimp is holding out on us.
If you ever say pimp in front of me again.
Pimp.
We do have the romance here. I mean, he's still a jerk. I mean, I would say
he's being a jerk, but she is responding as though he is being a jerk, like
right.
You would. In the book, she just keeps like, she just kind of goes along with him. And like, here I am again.
He keeps showing up at her door. Yes, exactly. Lindsay Wagner, like that whole thing where he falls asleep on the side of the road and she just like walks away and he's so upset. Like, you're not nourishing me. I need more nourishment.
Yeah.
You're just draining from me. She's like, oh, okay, well then.
Oh, is that what I am?
Oh, but
thought I was a person.
But you're right. Like Timothy Bottoms is so good. He's
excellent. He's wonderful. We talked about him when we talked about Last Picture Show. He's just perfect for this role.
You haven't paid homage to my father yet. Why don't I take you to meet him?
Why didn't you tell me you were Kingsfield's daughter?
Well, I'm not his daughter very much. Why didn't you call me?
Wait a minute. You were the one who left me in the park. Why didn't you call me?
I knew I'd see you here today.
You lied to me, Susan. You told me your last name was Fields.
My last name is Fields. I'm married. We're separated. He's still in Europe and we're getting a divorce.
So why come back?
Because my mother is in a mental institution. That's why I came back.
Sorry.
She's crazy as hell. But I'm not.
Couldn't prove it by me.
I have spent my required hour. Would you like to take a walk?
No, you look too different dressed like that. I've got to think. Please, excuse me.
I'll be home at 9 o'clock.
Because he is our surrogate, the audience surrogate in this weird environment of Harvard law. And so unlike in the book, through Tim in the film, through his eyes, through Hart's eyes, we see like the absurdity of this archaic system that we're all, we've all agreed we have to all go through to get what we want out of life. And like, wow, there's a swimming pool in the middle of all of this. And wait a minute, we go to the professor's house for a party. Like, he doesn't even know who we are. Why are we going? I remember parties like that.
Are they awkward?
And, yeah, I'll say. I just suddenly had a flashback. There was a professor of I won't say who it was, but my husband had a professor there. And I was around a lot because I was also going to school in Boston. And we weren't married, but we were pretty much engaged by then. And I had met this guy over, like, every time. He was like, and who are you? Yeah, being nice. He was being nice. But I was, like 21 or whatever, introducing himself and, being very gracious. But every single time, as though we had never met before. And after, like, 2 years of that, they had a little sort of, I don't remember, they had a party for him for some reason, and everybody went, and I went along with Todd. But at this point, we were married. And he comes up to me at the party. He says, "Oh, who are you?" And I very rudely, I was not polite about it. I said, "I'm Todd's wife. We've met like 8 times at least." Something like that.
Was he embarrassed?
And then to his credit, he turns right around and he walks over to Todd, we weren't standing together. He walks right over to Todd, which maybe he would have remembered. He says, I hear him. He says, "Todd, I just met your wife. She's delightful."
I would have been, sore about it. Now that I'm older and I've had a life where I've had to meet so many people in my life, I was
listen, I feel for the guy.
Now I get it. Like I forget a name as soon as it gets. Yeah, that's what you do. Like you're meeting people all the time, every year, and all these new faces and all this. I mean, it's got to be. But the author said that being a law professor was like the greatest job. Like being a law student is tough, but being a professor.
It's really, again, he seems like a really sweet guy. And he definitely does have a real love. That's wonderful. A real love and a passion for the law. We should have people like that
Yes.
who are practicing the law, and training future lawyers, right? And that is great. I found, like I said, it's a book that should have been a blog is my verdict, but it's not bad. I just don't relate to it.
Yeah.
But I love this movie. I do relate to the movie.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Everybody is so good in this. Just the way that it's shot. All the locations are so great. I love her wardrobe.
I would wear everything that she has. And this is 1973.
Gorgeous.
And it's just, but it's that New England tailored look.
She's beautiful.
And she is beautiful. She's a model.
I saw her once in the Los train station. We were waiting to take a train. And she walked to the Union Station terminal. And it was like, are we in a shampoo commercial all of a sudden? Because it was literally like slow motion, just beautiful. She's so pretty. And she's I keep calling her the Bionic Woman. Listen, the Bionic Woman was important to me when I was a little girl. But I don't want to discount the fact. The reason the Bionic Woman was such a good show was because she's so freaking good. She's super good.
We had that in Wonder Woman. We were very lucky.
Mm-hmm. Also very good.
Yeah. Yeah. In the end, he does, by the way, get an A. He is super smart.
Yes.
He is.
But we also have this other subplot of her divorce, right? So we actually learn stuff about Susan in the movie, and the husband is she's dealing with this. We learn about that relationship that she's getting out of, and why she doesn't want to be so committed. None of that is in the book. Why she doesn't want to be so committed to Hart. And at the end, he gets his grades. She gets her divorce, her final divorce papers in the mail. So they both have gotten these things in the mail. So then when he takes his and makes the airplane and throws it in, then it actually means something.
Right.
Yes, of course he knows what his actual grades are. Of course he does. You feel like she has given him some perspective on things in a way that it just doesn't happen at all in the book. And I really like that.
Same.
It's a very satisfying ending in the movie and a very unsatisfying ending in the book. And it's the same ending, basically.
Yeah, they don't even do the part where he says he doesn't remember his name. Or does he? I don't even.
No, they do.
Oh, they do?
They do.
What else is there to say? I do like the study sessions, too. I think, they're
really good.
There are 4 or 5 actors. They're look alike. They're the same age. They're all white. They're all and yet they all exude something just a little bit different for their characters, which is really good acting.
Yes, I agree. I found myself in the book getting them confused at points. And having to go back and look because sometimes, for the most part, they refer to each other by their last name. Hart is his last name. But every now and again, they use a first name, and then it would really throw me off because they talk very much alike, and they all have a very similar background. And I can't keep track of this one is doing contract law and that one is doing property law. I don't know. But in the movie, like you said, each has a little different, slightly different personality that makes it much more fun.
Yeah. So book versus movie.
The movie.
Of course. The same. Yeah. It's not even close. It's I really enjoyed this movie, by the way. And I was saying to Margot, I posted on TikTok at Brooklyn Margot a couple of scenes, and I've gotten 70,000 views on it. And it's people coming in, and they're like, "This is the best movie ever. I love this. The best. This is just like what law school is like for me." And I was like, "Oh," but yeah, it is really. It sounds boring or sort of well, who cares? But I don't know. When I was watching it, I was really absorbed in it. I mean, the hair is the only thing that's distracting. It's the men's hairstyles in 1973 are horrifying.
Okay, let me just say this is true. I know, and when Timothy Bottom's hair is doing a lot of heavy lifting in terms of character development for me. A lot of his, you can't take him seriously because his hair is bouncing all over the place. It's very cute. Yeah, the hair game is very strong here between Lindsay Wagner and Timothy Bottoms. It's a lot. The woman who plays Ashley, she's got beautiful curly red hair.
Yeah.
Everybody's got amazing hair in this movie. Similar way, the other Harvard movie that we've talked about is Love Story.
Yes.
And one of the things that I liked about Love Story was its portrayal of Harvard. It does give you that kind of sense of awe, but it's also, you also have to remember that it's also the 1960s, and I feel like we get that in this movie in a way it's very, very fun. I really enjoyed it. I really found it very interesting, and loved it. I loved it.
It became a TV series on CBS and then on Showtime.
Series.
Yeah, and for many years it ran. So I loved it.
So movie.
Yeah, movie.
Okay, so let's talk about what we're thinking about for the next little spell here, because it is June. It is Pride. We are not forgetting about Pride, but we wanted to do something a little bit different this year for Pride, because we've covered a lot of there's been a lot of great books and movies that we've covered over the past years. And we've done Pride Month for most of the time that we've had this show. So we have a little something else that we're kind of thinking of doing a little bit different for this year. But so all of that is to say, we're not quite doing Pride yet.
Right.
We got one more week before we're going to really jump in. So let's talk about what we're going to do next week.
This is the #1 streaming movie on Netflix right now, and it's called Hitman. And it's Richard Linklater, is the director, and Glenn Powell, who is a brand new movie star. He co-wrote the movie with him. He was in Maverick. He's in the romance movie that he's with Sydney Sweeney that came out a few months ago that everyone was talking about. He co-wrote this movie with him. I'm telling you, he's a movie star. This is someone who's a superstar. I loved this, and it's based on a magazine article from Texas Monthly called Hitman, and it's Skip Hollandsworth, who's a fantastic writer. He's one of my faves at Texas Monthly. So we figured it's pretty quick to read, and then it's a really enjoyable film. And then we'll tell you what we're going to do for Pride the week after that.
So we're going to do the Hitman next. Mm-hmm. If you are a member of our Facebook group, I think we can link the article there.
Oh, yeah, I'll definitely post that there.
Yeah. Okay, now, Margot, where can they find you online?
You could find me at Brooklyn Margot that's on TikTok and also on Twitter. And then I'm at Brooklyn Fitchick, that's my site. And then I'm at Brooklyn Fitchick for Threads, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Where can they find you, Margot?
You can find me online at coloniabook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama.
All right, everyone. You have your assignments. We're going to read and then watch the movie on Netflix, and we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Just spelled it all out. We have a Patreon page. Type in there Book vs. Movie Podcast, where you can find 8 years worth of shows. You can follow Margot D on social media at Brooklyn Margot and also Brooklyn Fitchick. You can find Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thank you again for listening, and please be sure to send along your suggestions for the show. Remember, the book needs to be easy to get your hands on, and